Hey, welcome to the post-run commentary I'm making for my 2:17:58 PB in Park 1. It's the world record at the time of recording this. It's the first 2:17. I just wanted to make this kind of post-commentary to kind of go over, my thoughts on the run as a whole. A lot of, things, a lot of route changes and everything. It's not. It's sort of. I wanted to make it because I had no mic on this stream, and just also there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened this run that, I'll probably use in future runs if I go and try to get like a lower time. That I just haven't had the chance to fully flesh out, but I feel like this is a good enough attempt to where I can kind of go and pause as I'm going if I feel like there's something I need to elaborate on. But yeah, I kind of wanted to just do this as a sort of, mini celebration for the fact that I got the 217 finally after so much grinding. Because my attempt counter, it went up a lot over the course of this one grind. And, it's really satisfying to have gotten this run. I knew I could get it, but it was kind of, unreal in the moment. You didn't get to see my live reaction, but trust me, I was like vibrating. Like I was so excited. But yeah, so, to begin with, like, I guess talk about mashing and stuff. The mashing in this game kind of, the way I mash, I do this sort of vibrating thing with my arm, which I know probably isn't good for it. That's the way I mash fastest, and that's just, how I do it a lot of the time. Sometimes I'll, like, roll my thumb between the 1 and 2 buttons, but it's not really worth it. Anyway, that just, like, it takes a small amount of time for each text box. It helps a lot over the course of the beginning of the game, especially, where you don't have, like, these high margins of error for stuff. But, yeah. So, with this berry here, I make sure to get this berry. There are a lot of 80% routes that don't get it. I think the Baneri one doesn't get it. This route needs it because the berry route is very strict with the optional friends. Sometimes you're going to have to get crates that just waste time later, but you're going to have to break this anyway, so it's much better to spend like 1 extra second, if that, grabbing this berry than try and, get any other time. Now, you'll notice throughout a lot of my movement in this tutorial, especially, but throughout the game, I try and like micro-optimize the directions and like angles Pikachu's running at with like holding up and then like a direction, usually left or right, to kind of reorient myself. Because turning a direction and then running, a lot of times is a lot faster than doing it while you're dashing. Here you have to pause and then dash forward. It's a small thing for this chase here, but it makes it more consistent to get like a decent time here, because I think normally you get like, if you just dash straight at it and guess, you can either end up with a 57 flat or something, or like a 57.6 is the highest you can get if you know exactly where it'll go when it goes left. Or if it goes right, you can get a 56.3 because you didn't prepare for the direction. So kind of holding there just averages out a bit, makes the runs more consistent. But a lot of the beginning of this run is just, simple tutorial stuff. But there are a lot of like small movement optimizations you'll see, like I'll try and angle Pikachu the right direction to trigger that cutscene without spending a bunch of extra movement running a certain direction. And there are small things like that that kind of add up over the course of the run. You just gotta make sure you consider. It's not like the most important, like I don't think it's run ruining or whatever, and sometimes I will just do the easier thing. But a lot of the time, in this run, that small amount of time over the course of 2.5 hours adds up. Which is why it's like a lot of practice and small things that can really, you wouldn't think like, oh, I jumped 1 or 2 extra times here or there across the run when I tried to pick up items. That doesn't sound bad. That's like half a second to a second each time. That's like 5 to 10 seconds over the course of the run. But for a run this strict, that can make or break whether or not you get a PB or whether or not you get a, 217. And I'm not perfect with it, but the more stuff I'm consistent at trying and getting, the better my chances are. But there's a lot of spots here at the beginning and later on with like the movement where I'm not 100% sure the exact best way to do it. This is just my intuitive sense of I think this is the best way. Like, I don't know if it's better to run towards that sign or to run left there. It feels like you trigger the cutscene faster, but I'm not sure. And this start was a pretty good first split. Not like the best ever, but like this loading screen popping up at 5:19 is pretty decent. A lot of the time, you know, for my comparison, 7:28 isn't really the best Meadow Zone, but it's a good one to compare against for, you know, just starting an attempt. Because, you know, anything higher than that are like, it's not the best, but I could keep going if it's like a 7:30 or lower. But like, better than a 7:28 means you're probably up to a good start. Because, you know, it's 1 or 2 seconds, it's not going to make or break the run. But, you know, that being said, if you're 2 seconds ahead, like 2.5 seconds ahead at the beginning of the run, then that can help massively with how much you're letting yourself continue the rest of Meadow Zone, because you're slightly less strict on everything else. This text box here, I hate, because I dash so that Pikachu kind of lands there and I don't have to jump into talking to Pokemon, which is slightly faster than jumping, but it's also a lot harder because you have to kind of time it specifically. A lot of the time I don't do it. Sometimes I guess and try and do it. Other times I will just jump. But it's very easy to talk to Chikorita or talk to that sign and then waste a bunch of time. It's also easy on these yes-no menus and stuff here to accidentally spam into no instead of yes because they don't react very good. This Daring Dash minigame is interesting because it barely affects the course of the run. Like, it's like 0.5 seconds at most. But, you know, it's always nice to see like a 16.3, 2, or 1 as opposed to like a 16.7 or 8. But that speed boost is really annoying to time for that minigame, so I'm not very consistent at it. But when I do get good runs, like I've gotten the record pace for some of these. I think one run I got a 7:16 Turtwig, and I didn't even realize that was the record for that minigame until then. Yeah, and minus 2.2 is really good. I think my goal is like minus 2.6 or 2.8, I think. So that's a really good start on this comparison. Which you'll notice my PB is a 2:18.33 at this point, but I'm using a 2:18.45 comparison. The reason for that is my route varies kind of. It's a bit flexible in the amount of optional friends and where I get them. So I kind of allow some leeway here. And allow some like comparison options. I can switch. This is 1856. This is the comparison it's currently on. But that assumes that, you know, I don't get Baneri, which is what all the routes I'm doing now don't do Baneri, but a lot of people do Baneri. I just don't, because I think it's slow. Because of Shinx mainly, and Baneri having really bad spawns and spawning in animations and stuff, but, and I guess I can get to that here, but this route, I have a comparison for 1826, which is like 30 seconds lower than this one. If I don't get either Oddish or Trico, I usually don't continue those runs, but just for frame of reference, if I felt like continuing. 1856 is one Pokemon, and then it'll be a 1926 for both of them. And it's not exact. 30 seconds might be a bit high for certain what you're gaining or missing, depending on which Pokemon you're missing. But I think it's a good baseline. Now, back with no Baneri. Baneri, as a Pokemon, like, I timed it. It takes, like, 40 seconds by itself in the optimal, like, you get the best chase possible. And, like, not including, like, spawn RNG and all that other stuff. That's pretty high for a Pokemon. Like, it's an optional friend in this game. Usually you get it because Lotad and Shinx are very fast friends. But the problem is that Baneri is just so slow as a friend. And that's assuming an optimal spawn. And you're not going to get an optimal Pachirisu and an optimal Baneri spawn. So instead, I take advantage of the fact that there are a lot of good... You can get optimal Pachirisus a lot more often if you're just looking for one Pokemon, just Pachirisu, instead of having to get both a good Baneri and Pachirisu spawn. Because extra movement is really bad in this run. And a lot of the good Pachirisu spawns also give you these 57 or 56 chases. Which is also a good chase. It's not consistent. Sometimes you'll run up the path and get a 54. But I'll generally try and run and talk to Bulbasaur to do the minigame. And if I see Pachirisu on the way, I'll go ahead and grab it. And then if it's not in my direct field of vision, I'll just go talk to Bulbasaur, do the minigame, and then hope that Pachirisu is on the way out between Bulbasaur and Trico. Now, sometimes I will continue the run, especially if it's at a good start. If I can kind of look around and get Pachirisu really quickly. But generally the idea is I'm saving time. Because Pachirisu is going to be no extra movement and a really fast friend as is. Whereas trying to get Pachirisu and Baneri to spawn in good spots when there's only one Baneri versus two Pachirisus that can spawn in, it's just a much bigger gamble, I feel. So ultimately, even though it feels like, oh, you're gambling on getting more optional friends, you kind of counteract that by saying, well, but I'm also not having to gamble at the beginning of the run every single time to get a good Baneri and a good Pachirisu, and then losing time on slow because Baneri's slow anyway. And then you have to gamble on Lotad and Shink spawns too. And sometimes Lotad just doesn't give you a good spawn, or it runs in a slightly bad spot when you thought it was good. Now this is a good Trico. When you go to that cutscene, I usually look at the timer there and try to be under 11:45, and that was like 11:38, which is really good to start with. And then if I need extra reference, this Mankey under 12 minutes is what I usually aim for here, which might not be an exact, one-to-one, but it's pretty good. Now, Mankey quick kill is something we've already kind of solved for a while. But it took me a while to get used to doing it good. And I've taken a more cautious approach to it, which is, running to the left here, jumping, and then I'll let Pikachu, kind of turn around and reorient itself before I dash straight into it, which might cost, a fraction of a second, but makes it more consistent and not have to worry about, oop, I screwed it up, I just lose 4 seconds, versus, I took the time and just spent, a half a second to a quarter of a second, reorienting myself. So, Oddish spawned here. You look around, Oddish isn't there, so you run left. There are 3 chances for Oddish, and 2 chances for Trico, as an optional friend. And Oddish, Oddish can be really cooperative sometimes, but occasionally it will just not work out. And, I'll get to that later. Ideally, I'd rather have it before... Well, actually, there are technically 4 spots, but there are 3 before the split. Which means I'd rather have it before I do the Venusaur minigame. But, of course, that doesn't always work out like that. But, we go through the gate and move on. Here, there's the cutscene triggers and stuff are automatic, so I just kind of match into it. But the Oddish spawns, usually it can be really good. Oddish and Trico. Even if you get a bad spawn of both, I don't think it's necessarily a death sentence on your run if you've gotten a good Pachirisu. But if you've gotten a bad Pachirisu and then your Oddish and Trico don't work out, then it's like, it's a bad start. I wouldn't bother with it. I mean, you can, technically, it's not like you're gonna kill the run. You can probably still PB with it. But it's like, if I want to spend, I could spend 15 more minutes getting a better attempt, or I could spend 40 minutes, or spend 20 minutes on this bad attempt and I have to spend the 15 minutes anyway. That Oddish I considered getting, but it was a bit far. I was like, because the thing is, it's a lot worse when you have to run to the Pokemon and then run back. Now that's a good Trico spawn. Around this leaf texture here is where you really want it to be. And in that case you can quick kill it and it's really fast. Fast Trico is not required for a good start to the run, but that's really, you know, it's way faster than a lot of the other versions of it. Sometimes we just don't get Trico because he doesn't spawn in good spots. I'll try and take him though if the second spawn is still bad, because you get one spawn on the way to the Spearow and on the way back. But the problem with Spearow is that, I mean, the problem with Trico there, you can't really always manipulate how he's going to run, what path he's going on. And sometimes he will just give you a 49 to 47 second chase, in like worst case scenario. But also a lot of the time he can give you like 51s and stuff, and those are more average and those are acceptable, just not amazing. And even if you get like a 49 or 47 second chase, if your other RNG has been good, it's still fine. Which is why I say like this is a lot more flexible than the other route, even though it doesn't seem like it is, because you're gaining so much time off of not getting Baneri that yes, you get a bad Trico and that kind of erases the time save, but that still makes you even with a Baneri attempt, which, you know, in general just makes it worth doing to me. Never mind that Shinx and Lotad are not... I mean, Lotad's a very fast friend. Shinx is not as fast as it seems like it is. Now, I didn't see Oddish there, so I run back to the left. There's a certain texture there I kind of line up with to once again try and get Pikachu to talk without having to jump into Krogunk there. Now, I started doing Krogunk after Spearow instead of before, because if you notice, you talk to him and he goes behind, like, to that same spot regardless of whether or not you talk to him from the front or the back. It's just a small time save of movement around Krogunk. Because if you try and, talk to Krogunk here, and then, like, first, then you have to dash around Krogunk wherever you, like, get left at to go back to find Spearow. If you do it at last, then you can just go hold back left and dash immediately, which is just a lot more convenient. And, you know, once again, there's a texture here they kind of line up with, which is like one of these last, you know, repeating patterns down here to talk to Venusaur. It's not exact always, but it's generally faster. The only risk is you don't pay attention and forget that there's a cutscene trigger, and then you balk Venusaur and waste time. Yeah, I mean, the chat's yelling Oddish no, because it's like one of the best starts to a run I've had, in terms of like up to that point in Meadow Zone. This is a really good Meadow Zone aside from Oddish, but once you factor in Oddish, you know, we'll see, but it's not great. Yeah, you could save time here. I started doing Pikachu here because I realized if I do 3 swings on Mankey, I might as well just do 3 swings on Pikachu. You can do 2 swings, but you have to get like a very specific spot. And even with Pikachu, sometimes I fail this minigame because I just time the release wrong or time one of my swings wrong and don't get the amount of distance I need. But you can save like 2 or 3 seconds on this minigame if you pick Trico and swing twice and let go like at the right moment. You can just barely get a 164 with 2 swings on Trico. I don't do that because the amount of times I'll mess that up is not worth 3 sets. But yeah, so we'll see this comparison. It says 118, and it'll be like really ahead. The problem is with this sort of comparison is that Oddish is longer than Trico usually. It's like a 32, I think, 33 second friend or something. So it says minus 22.8. It's probably closer to like a minus 19. I don't know the exact, because I haven't like timed Oddish, but and it depends on the hide and seek spawn you get. But yeah, so far it's a good Meadow Zone, like a really good one. But of course you still have the Oddish RNG, and you want to get Oddish because there's a hide and seek text box in there that makes Oddish seem longer than it is. But Oddish is actually a really fast friend with good amounts of berries and stuff that make the route work. We're gonna have to be getting Psyduck later anyway. You might as well do Oddish. As long as you possibly can. That being said, this run we might as well have just skipped it, because you're gonna see we're gonna run down here for Oddish. Oddish is, oh, it's in a good spot, but then it chases Apom. And I accidentally bonk it. I almost falls in the water and kills the attempt. You barely don't ruin the attempt. And that freaked me out at the time. I was like, really? But that was still really slow. But we continue because it's such a good start anyway. Unfortunately, I put SOH in the chat. You don't see Oddish. If it's up on the up left up here, that's a good spawn. But this spawn is the worst spawn. It's like a 56 point something, which is like a second or two slow. Not the end of the world. I think it's like a second and a half slow, but... this Oddish spawn is really bad because we had to run really far to get to it. Luckily, we don't have to run back the direction, so it's not as bad as it could have been. If it was like, if I went for Oddish on the right earlier, it would have been just as bad, if not a bit worse. As it stands, we're still at a decent Meadow Zone, but it's nowhere near as good as it once was. Like, I'd say, before then I was like, oh, I'm like 20 seconds ahead. But that Oddish was like, we lost at least like 10 seconds on that, right? Plus the fact that it was 19. We're probably close to like -8 or something right now instead. But the good news is we have Trico and Oddish, which means the friend route is going to be a lot more lenient. So I kind of have specific paths I take in this spot for meeting place. Because I learned the dash, like, directions and stuff. I can make them work, but I have to do them a very specific way. Once I'm done talking to Chikorita here, this movement and stuff is generally easy, but once I'm done talking to Chikorita, I'll just hold right and dash once, and run straight towards Driplim, and should be able to land in the area. But sometimes, Pikachu's just... I press the button really quickly or something, I don't know. If I don't get the right line, sometimes the talk box doesn't appear, or I try to jump, press 2 too early for the talk box. And when I get impatient, I jump instead and bonk the Pokemon and have to wait for their animation to end, which is slow. So here I dash left and dash past that root on the right there, and then end the talk box there to talk to Misdreavus really conveniently. This is a good start, because when I have both Pokemon, I'm aiming for a 22 or less when I start talking to Misdreavus. There I had that. Just barely. And that's kind of just not a hard and fast rule, but that's what I kind of generally aim for when I'm doing my attempts. But yeah. And I take my photo here. And, run. Now here I hold back right and dash just once after I talk to him. To talk to Electabuzz. I have to be careful because kind of sometimes I accidentally manage to bonk him, but generally that lines it up pretty well. And these extra jumps are not a huge deal. They're just like small time losses, where if I don't want to take him, I'd rather not. Because honestly, if I do the jump method, I'm also a lot more prone to bonking into the Pokemon anyway, so I might as well have these lineups that kind of work a bit better. That's what I've done for Park 2 a lot of the time, too. And in my experience, that just kind of helps where the controls can be a bit jank in this game. I also aim for a 23 or less when I talk to Corphish there. So generally I was just barely there. So this is kind of a good, but not like crazy run. I think I've had like runs where I had like a 22:51, 22:52 talking to Corphish is like the best I've had. With both Pokemon, but that's a good start still. I mean, even though it's not like ideal, it's still fine. So, moving on to Beach Zone, this area is really tough because of Pokemon spawns. We're gonna be looking for Azurill and Psyduck here at the beginning especially. Other Pokemon are good, but we really need both of those Pokemon before we hit the bridge ideally. Especially Psyduck, because we don't have a lot of chances for Azurill to spawn in where we want it to. And for Psyduck, the big issue is Golduck spawns in over in that cape area to the right where Feraligatr is, and you only go over there once before the minigame, and you need Golduck for the minigame. So you really want Psyduck to be in a good spawn. Azurill, you have more chances, but you want to have it so Totodile can spawn in later. I see both of them here, and I decide, okay, I'm going to go for Azurill. Usually I go for just Psyduck and skip Azurill and hope Azurill is in a better spot. But Azrael was pretty close to me that time. So I was like, well, I think it's worth it because I can get a good chase out of it. And, you know, you watch this and it's like, yeah, a 56 is definitely a good Azrael chase because sometimes you get like 54s or even like 52s if it goes up the bridge. So we spawn in, all these spawns don't really matter because everything respawns every single time one of these, you know, Totodles come to play animations come in. So I have a friend route I'm going for here. Unfortunately, Psyduck is really bad. Like awful. I honestly should have maybe went for Slowpoke there and hoped Psyduck respawned in a better spot. But the problem is, if he respawns over in that back corner, then we just lose the run. And it was good enough in an attempt where I was like, well, I'll take the extra time moving back and forth. It sucks, but it happens. This is not a good Psyduck spawn. It's convenient because we know where he is, but it's a 55 on the timer. 55.75. Whereas, ideally, we can get a 58.5. So this is just like one of the worst Psyducks you can get. There are like a few worse spawns, but there's not many. And of course, Golduck will spawn in here. So yeah, I guess while we're, I don't think I got any other Pokemon. Yeah. These quizzes can be annoying, but I don't really have much to say about them right now. I might go over that a bit later. But it's basically just answering the questions quickly and without like misclicking and wasting a bunch of time, like which you will see I will get mad about later, but we are not there yet. For now, I guess I'll go over the friend routing a bit. In this zone, we have a certain amount of friends we need to meet. We're gonna get Meowth and Geodude later, ideally. So that takes 2 off of the list of like 10 we need, and then Teddiursa is one of them, so including Trico, we need 7 friends, ideally, which would, in theory, the best set of Pokemon is Starly, which I think this is going to be a good, okay chase, if I remember correctly, but... Oh, no, wait, this is a good chase. Yeah, 57 is really good for Starly. So we got some good chases. That's probably why this run did so good in Beach Zone. Because I was wondering, like, some of the spawns for Pokemon were not the best, but I guess the chases were really good. But anyway. In this run, we need 10 Pokemon, 10 optionals, to meet our friend quota by Bastiodon. And there's like a certain amount we need over to, Gyarados too. And that 10 doesn't include Chimchar and some other optional things, but the ones that I'm generally listing in my head here. Right, so Teddiursa we're always going to get. There's always going to be a good spawn for Teddiursa. There's no reason not to go for Teddiursa. Then we have, because the berries are good and stuff. Then we have Trico, which we will and won't get sometimes. Then we also want, you know, we're going to get Golduck. That's not one of those optional friends because we have to get it. Luckily we got a good spawn here to where we can just do the fight quickly. I think I might have tried to quick kill here, but it's not a good spawn for it. But as long as it's not in that far back corner over there, we're good. But yeah, the big thing about Beach Zone, we need Starly, Staravia, Pidgeotto, Azurill, Totodile. And I think Slowpoke is the one I usually try and go for because it can spawn in Mudkip, which is also a good alternate if one of the other spawns doesn't work out. But yeah, so we usually go for Trico, and then that combination of, I think I go for, no, I don't go for Slowpoke here. Oh yeah, because I saw Staravia and was like, oh, I'll get that. But then Staravia flew away. So I was like, I just won't get it. But yeah, so we have Trico and Starly. We're looking for Staravia, Pidgeotto, Totodile, and Azurill, which we already have Azurill. Which is why we go ahead and go for it. Because Totodile tends to spawn this area by Drifblim, in the path on the way to Drifblim. He also spawns along that coastline over there. So there's still more spawn chances for him. But I try and get Azurill as soon as I can, because Totodile spawns can just screw you over sometimes, and you won't. And Totodile's one of the fastest ones, so you kind of need to get it in a lot of cases, unless you're wanting to take a time loss. So, I guess while we're here, I'll talk about the items for Bidoof and stuff. So, we used to do the item slides along these wall here, but as far as I can remember, these are not actually fast from what I was told. The timing is not good for these. Maybe the first one works, but you'd rather take the chance for the Chimchar spawn to be convenient anyway. Generally, because you have to get all 4 of the things of lumber here, the best path forward is getting that first lumber on the way, obviously, but then I try and hit that close lumber right back here most of the time, while looking in the distance to see if Chimchar is over here, and he is, so I instead run over and battle Chimchar. Because you want to get Chimchar as close to a path that you need to go on anyway as possible. Of course, ideally, you could quick kill Chimchar by like being on that right path on the river, but that is not common, and it usually doesn't work out that way anyway. Now, because we don't get Shinx in this run, we don't have to go in that back left area. And that's the main reason I was like, okay, well, Shinx is also not really that great of a friend. Because in theory, it's fast. It's like 25 to 30 seconds, I think. The problem is, you're always having to run up left to go get Shinx, and then back to get the lumber here. Unless Shinx decides it's going to chase the other Shinx into a convenient spot. But that's just not realistic to rely upon, and I think really just helped my beach zones be more consistent. Which, if you're doing the Baneri route, you could also take some lessons from this route and just get Meowth and Geodude as alternates for your friends in Beach Zone instead of resetting a bunch. But I thought it was better to take the resets and get the extra time save at the beginning of the run. For the sake of how this is all working, because resetting for Baneri is not really fun for me. But yeah, now that we had the Pokemon, we can just run straight to the, lumber. But, this is kind of a dull segment. But I'm always having to make sure that I'm not... I want to press 2 to talk to Bidoof as soon as possible, because, the faster you talk to him, you save more time. But you drop the lumber or whatever because you pressed 2 too early, anticipating where the thing would pop up. And you just lose so much time. So I had to really be careful about that, and it took a lot of work to be able to kind of optimize that while not jumping the gun so much. And I think in this run I still do it a few times with some other items. But we'll see. It's gonna work out. Yeah. Occasionally, I'll try and get Bibarel here if it's in a really good spawn and we don't have a lot of friends. Because if we're desperate enough at this point in the run, we're missing Starly and Azurill or whatever, we sometimes want to just go for whatever we can get. You'll see Bibarel will spawn here. You can sometimes quick kill it into the river. It is not common. But if it is in a convenient spot, it gives more berries than a lot of the alternatives. So it can really help with your berry routing and make you not have to hit crates in Iceberg Zone because you missed something. This is a good Chimchar spawn where you could maybe you get that and get a quick kill in the river. That's like one of the most convenient ways you can have it, but you can't always rely upon that because, if you don't get it, you just waste a bunch of time. I'm very bad about pressing plus there. You're supposed to mash it and then not hear any noise to have optimal time save. Otherwise, if you heard any noise or see any footage, it's bad. Not by a lot, but it's just tiny time loss. I looked over here and saw Pidgeotto from a distance. Normally, I try and go up left and get that one item slide just because it saves like a second or two. But there, I went to go get Pidgeotto. I got kind of lucky because honestly, I was not gauging the distance that well. I just happened to not bonk. But with Pidgeotto and Staravia, you have this quick kill strat where you kind of lure the Pokemon to land. And it'll auto-die if it hits the water. Trying to fight them normally is not good. Especially if you're not like good enough to do the quick kill strat. That's an Azurill spawn that would work. And the reason it's okay to get this back lumber sometimes is because it is very close to Bidoof compared to the other ones. The problem is, you know, being able to go directly to the very close lumber and then item slide it rather than walking backwards past Bidoof and then taking it to Bidoof is slower. But whenever you're going to get a good spawn, like if you need Stravia or Pidgeotto especially, or you need Azurill, or even you just want to get Slowpoke, you know, it can be worth going down that direction to get the optional friend instead. We had some good Azurill spawns here. We didn't necessarily need to do Azurill early like we ended up doing, but sometimes it doesn't work out like this. And like I said, this is a good Totodile spawn. But sometimes, you know, you'll get runs where Totodile, even if you get Azurill at the beginning, Totodile will spawn over on this coast whenever you go to run to Drifblim and back. And then as soon as you're done with all that that first Bidoof lumber, Totodile will stand over there by Drifblim the whole time, and you won't be able to get it. It is just so frustrating sometimes. Which is why it's good to have good backup strats. But, you know, the problem is, especially in this route, because you're getting less optional friends before Gyarados and before you get the Ponyta thing, you're much stricter on your berry route. Because we kind of substitute some Pokemon out for Cavern Zone in general. The consequence of that is you tend to get Pidgeotto, Staravia, and Totodile in your runs. Each of those get 20 berries each compared to the 10 berries most friends give. So, by having both Meowth and Geodude, you're having to be on a very strict berry route where if you get all 6 friends properly, then you have exactly the right amount of berries you need. If you have, if you're -1, like you're minus Slowpoke, then you're minus 10 berries. But if you're minus, like, Staravia, Totodile, or Pidgeotto, you're minus 20. Which means you have to get those berries from berry crates, or you have to get another friend to make up for it. And generally, the only friends you can really get to make up for the berry deficit before Ponyta is, like, Piloswine, which is just a 38 second, thing. And you can see me commenting there, this is a good start. It is. You know, the Pidgeotto was a bit slow because I had to run to the right there and I had to get the slower crate. But we had very good chases, even though we had a really bad Psyduck spawn. You know, I would say this Beach Zone doesn't end up being the best one I've ever seen because I did have to do some movement out of the way. But it's definitely very solid. Really the standard of what you kind of want in an attempt. Now, we got Pelipper. So this split, on my splits, by the way, kind of ignore it. The RNG makes it basically useless. I just kind of have it because I have a split for every single minigame there. And you'll see I see Staravia there, and I look behind me to try and follow the shadow. Staravia turns, but I thought the shadow was Wingul's, so I missed it for a second. I wasted like 5 or so seconds on that. Which is part of why this isn't an amazing Beach Zone compared to how it could be. You know, that, and if you watch these, now I don't know if this one ends up being good, let me see, but yeah, Staravia likes to fly away and do stuff like that. These are like 93, 94 second, quick kill fights, which is good, but 97 seconds is the best you can get, so it's like, you can do better on these fights. That, and the fact that I had to move a bit out of the way for Totodile, but not like a lot, and that Psyduck was a really bad spawn, and I had to move a bit out of the way for a Pidgeotto. Means this isn't like God Beach Zone or anything, but with that start I had, plus this Beach Zone, it really brings me ahead to a good start of the run. Now you'll see, currently my comparisons are on the 3 optionals missing route. I tend to go for that because if I get all the Pokemon I need before and don't get Slowpoke at all, and I'm just missing 1, Slowpoke is kind of slow anyway. It's just the Mudkip spawn is good, and like the 1 berry crate is like barely better, but it's not by much. So like, when you actually get down to it, it's just better to get, you know, stuff like you need to. But here we go and get the crates. Slowpoke was like really convenient, so I was like, okay, actually I'll do this. Unfortunately, I didn't talk to it directly, but I was able to jump over it and land like right there. Which means I'm gonna have to waste like a second turning around, but it's not a big deal. Slowpoke itself it's always gonna be a fast chase, but you can save like a fraction of a second on if it walks towards you versus away from you. But it's not really a big deal. But yeah, we go for these two crates because, at least from what I gather, these give you better chances of getting random Pokemon spawning around. Like, because you can kind of walk past a lot more going to this tree one than you can going to the one on the left. But also, like, honestly, they're just a bit easier and more fast, you know. The one in that back corner is always fast. I haven't really timed it to see whether or not it's better to go for the one that we usually item slide, or just go for the one in the distance, but the one reason you would go for the one that's past the bridge after you can't item slide because the bridge is making a gap there is that sometimes Totodile spawns over there if you're missing it and you're like really desperate. But here we have all the Pokemon we need, so I changed the comparison to the 2 missing comparison, which I don't use a lot because I mean sometimes I will, but generally speaking, I end up being missing 3, and I just get Slowpoke as one of my friends, and then get Mudkip to make up for it in the next area, and along with like 10 berries to make up for the fact that I had to get like Mudkip instead of Staravia or whatever. But as it stands, this is a good beach zone. Getting all 6 Pokemon is not very common, especially getting both quick kills. So it's really, you know, satisfying to see it all work out. Yeah. Pause for like a second so I can not like pause the video, just stop talking for a second so I can catch my breath because I'm talking a lot. But yeah, this is a pretty straightforward part of the run. But yeah, one of the things about this is that, as far as this specific segment goes, like with Gyarados, since we have 4411, is the comparison we're going against. That is true because we have 6 Pokemon right now, plus Chimchar. Sometimes we don't get Chimchar and get him later, and it kind of messes up the split. But generally, you know, we can kind of account for that in the way the comparisons are set up. Not perfectly, because the amount of time each Pokemon takes varies a bit. I use 30 seconds as a good baseline, but sometimes they're quicker, sometimes they take longer. But this is just the accurate comparison, so we're actually going to be this far ahead at this split. Now, of course, if you compare to Hoomstorm, it'll say like I'm way ahead or whatever. But the thing is, Hoom is a different route. Hoom is Baniri, Shinx, and Lotad. So Hoom isn't going to need to get Geodude or Meowth later. But I am 28.6 seconds ahead. With all the Pokemon I need, so that's a really good start. You know, I've been getting a lot of runs like that recently, which a lot of the ones that I get like this end up dying to Gold Nugget or stuff. This run didn't die to that, you know, but it definitely could have. Don't get me wrong, there was a mistake I made that could have killed this run. But that's basically how a lot of these go. There's some mistake where something happens, and, you know. So we get Feraligatr here. Feraligatr gives you a lot of berries, but isn't the fastest way to get those berries, technically. Technically, Torterra is better, because it gives you the same amount of berries. It is faster of a friend, if you do it perfectly. But Torterra can also kill you in 2 hits, and has very good homing attacks, so we get Feraligatr because we don't have to do any extra movement to find Torterra anyway. You know, maybe a future route will do Torterra, I don't know, but I'm not doing that right now. Because this is a fast enough fight as is. And you could just skip Feraligatr and get a regular fast friend instead of doing that long fight where you have to do 4 hits. But the only way to do that really is if you get a gold nugget. I mean a gold berry, not a gold nugget. Because then you can replace that with a much quicker fight. You know, whether or not you want to do that, it is an option. But, you know, we're going to Iceberg here, and recently I've been getting Mudkip as a hide-and-seek alternate, in Iceberg Zone specifically. The Beach Zone spawns are too inconsistent, because some of the hide-and-seeks you don't do, because they end up being slow when you can't factor in that you have to run all the way to the spawn and check behind like something to see whether or not the Pokemon's there. Most of the hide-and-seeks we do, we can kind of look one direction, see if it's there, look another direction, and move a bit in that direction to see if it's there, and then if it's not, go in the 3rd spawn. In this run, we actually do get Mudkip. And you're thinking like, well, we have all 6 optionals, we're gonna get Geodude, Meowth, why do we need Mudkip? Mudkip is just, it's a pretty fast friend, and even though it's not quite as fast, I don't think, as some of the alternatives later. You know, because Mudkip was like right in the way, so why not get it? We're gonna have to spend the time spotting in for Slowpoke anyway. But if you see over here, we turn around, we don't see it. We look down, oh, it's right here. So we get it. That's probably one of the better spawns. The worst spawn you can get for Mudkip is you walk down there and Lapras isn't there. Mudkip is on the back right by those crystals or whatever. But Mudkip is useful because it saves, it lets you replace something else later. Whether or not you want to replace Burmy and get Burmy in a different spot. Or you can replace one of the friends you need if you're missing something. Or you can replace Raichu or Torchic in Cavern Zone and make that more consistent, because those Pokemon have really bad spawns. And their berry amounts are not important. Of course, Mudkip gives 10 berries, so if you're missing one of the 20 berry Pokemon, you have to get a crate, which isn't ideal, but it's faster than trying to do Mamoswine, which is like a 37-second friend. But, you know, it depends on what happens in your route. And it's like at this point in the run where I'm like, okay, we're having a good start, we need to keep going. A lot of these icebergs, I can either get really good icebergs that are like basically perfect, because there's not a lot of RNG in Iceberg, aside from like Quagsire and Octillery spawns, and like Ursaring, I guess. So the main thing is being able to land and pick up these items really quickly without dropping them on the ground. You know, every time you pick up and place an item on accident, it wastes time, and it's very easy to do that. Sometimes, even if the like talk box pops up, and you might even see this later in the run, if you press the button before it, like, it's properly all the way, like, the right size and everything, sometimes these talk boxes have the issue where they, you know, they seem fine, but then you jump instead. And, you know, that extra second wasted jumping, not a big deal until you do it like 5 times or you bonk into the Pokemon you're trying to talk to. But, you know, I've kind of memorized the movement here to get a really good first 2 things here. Usually, like, if sometimes Teddiurse is on the right and I'll grab it, but a lot of the time, I'll wait. If I didn't already get it by now. But I'll look back left here, because Ursaring will spawn in. And if you just dash straight to the block without looking, sometimes you can bunk Ursaring, it'll start attacking you, and it'll be a big waste of time. Here we get a Teddy Ursa spawn with a quiz. And, you know, there's been talk about the quiz being slower. I think it's faster as far as I know. I think I timed it at one point a long time ago, but it has not been recent. I prefer the quiz, but it's like, it doesn't matter, because you can't, it's not like you can determine it anyway, you're just either going to get one or the other, and it's going to be worth it regardless. There I kind of hesitated, because I was like, okay, is this really, is it Empoleon? Yeah, it's Empoleon. I sometimes have to process the quiz questions for a second, because I don't want to screw them up. I looked to see if Ursaring's close by real quick. I waste like 3 or 4 seconds here walking around, trying to get this thing, because I'm not in a good position to where I can automatically memorize the exact direction I need to run. And the controls can be a bit finicky with, you know, especially trying to pick up a small item like that. But Ursaring didn't spawn anywhere good, so we're going to get it later. We hear it stomping around, that's usually a good sign that it's nearby. So I kind of make sure to look behind me first, and it's right there, so I decide to take a second or two to go get it. You know. I can't believe I typed that chat message. Oh no, it's because the stream's delayed, that's why. I was like, how did I type this Ursaring message so quickly in the chat while I was, like, streaming? It's because the chat was delayed. Yeah, because I can kind of type stuff with one hand in the chat, if you see in the top left, to kind of my live thoughts. You know, there's certain strats to these fights where you have to kind of... There's small differences. Some Pokemon like Ursaring, it's better to dash towards it and then use Thunderbolt and then hit it. But, like Octillery, for instance, if you fight it, it's the same amount of health, but dashing toward it before you use Thunderbolt isn't worth it. I don't really know specifically what makes it better or not, other than that, like, I know certain Pokemon run towards you after they're hit, which might be the difference, but I'm not sure. Regardless, I know one's faster than the other, and I usually just try and do based on the Pokemon here. Primplup's another 3-bar Pokemon, so you have to Thunderbolt hit, Thunderbolt hit. I try and dash and hit it, because Primplup is very slow in movement. You know, a 91 point something is generally what you want. If you get less than a 91, then you probably, like, did slightly bad. But it's not a big deal either way. But, you know, at this point, we're gonna go down the chairlift. So, unfortunately, you know, this next fight is actually, I think I did a really good Froslass fight in this run, actually. It was, like, almost ideal. Occasionally, Quagsire gets a really bad spawn and blocks the fight. You kind of have to really, maneuver around. Because the problem with these Pokemon being in the way is that sometimes you use Thunderbolt, and then the Pokemon, you know, eats your Thunderbolt and it doesn't actually hit the Pokemon you're trying to hit. And then you have to wait for recovery before it'll let you use Thunderbolt again. But yeah. So we start this Froslass fight. If I remember correctly, I actually did a really good job this PB, with this. But you dash up to it pretty close and then hit it. You kind of wait until it starts to attack and then dodge, then Thunderbolt and hit it. Yeah, 91.85 is really good. I actually could have got a bit better if I had, like, been slightly closer to Froslass before I used Thunderbolt, but that's probably one of the best ones I've seen recently. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a 92 Froslass, so. But we're going to turn around, and generally, I try and get Octillery as soon as it's convenient. That Quagsire spawn actually was okay, but I was like, I can respawn, maybe try and get a better one. I think in hindsight, I maybe should have taken the Quagsire spawn, but I just didn't want Octillery to run in a really bad spot where I don't know where it is. But you kind of have to sometimes strategically use Octillery to be like, okay, would I rather it respawn stuff after the fight, or would I rather take this Quagsire spawn we have? There, I was like, it's kind of okay, but I can get a better one. But you prefer to get Octillery on the way, but sometimes you waste a second or two. That was an off-screen Quagsire that I bumped into there, which kind of sucked, but you know, I was like, okay, at least it's on the way. It's not the best Quagsire spawn. And then he just keeps walking away, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm gonna tear my brain out. This walking stuff isn't as slow as it seems like it is, because you're still moving in the direction you need, but it is not, fun. So here I have all the Pokemon I need. I actually have extra, because I have extra berries, which is going to actually lose me a bit of time later, but it's going to be worth it, I think, in the end. But yeah, so we just run down here. I've just recently started to get a good feel for where the dash spawn is for talking to Frostlass, but I'm not perfect on it. Now, when you see those, like, emote animations above the Pokemon's head sometimes, like the little lines where they're talking to each other, a lot of the time after the conversations, there are certain Pokemon that'll have, like, angry reactions or sad reactions or teardrops that'll either skip past some of their first dialogue responses and be like, make them basically have a text box like, oh, I have a headache, or I'm sad, or whatever, or, oh, yeah, I'm doing good, or just, for Azrael's case, it's literally just, Rill! It sometimes skips really long text boxes, and it can even help with a better auxiliary spawn if you're in this area, because normally the text box is really long, but you can kind of skip it with a good auxiliary. In this case, though, Ursaring talking to someone sucks, because that makes him mad, and sometimes he'll just attack you randomly, even if you did nothing to him. And if, in Ursaring's case, the other thing is, it can be mad, and then suddenly you just lose time because, oops, sorry, he won't do the fight with you unless he's not mad. Which, that Glalie fight, by the way, a lot of people do Thunderbolt strats there. I do dash into Glalie because it's just faster. And you just straight up don't have to wait for any attacks or anything doing it that way. And, like, it's such a small animation after you do it that, like, you might as well. We're getting towards the end of this split. Now, keeping in mind that I got Mudkip earlier, you know, we are still on good pace. It seems like we lost a bunch of time here when you look at the comparison that's going to be there. But the reality of it is Mudkip is going to lose time here temporarily because I don't have a comparison for every single version of the run that has Mudkip, because it's already a lot of comparisons. I already have, just even between the no binary versions of the route, I have like 3 different versions of each variant, and I have 3 variants. So that's like 9 different versions of the comparison of the same splits. But I guess while I'm talking about that, since I'm kind of wading through this dialogue and minigame anyway, because this minigame isn't super interesting, just, you know, hit all the speed boosts and stuff. At least in terms of commentary. It's, you know, interesting to play, but not very interesting to, you know, watch. I mean, talk about. But I've been comparing against this 2:18:45 that I has my old PB for a while, and that's because it has a lot of very good reference points for comparing. My newer runs have really weird variations. Like, my other PBs have variations that just don't really work for comparison that well. So I won't use them as comparison until, like, right at the end of the run, whenever it's pretty much all the same. But the reality is, my PB here for these adjusted comparisons is really good because it has a reasonable enough Meadow Zone to compare against. It's actually a bit slow on Meadow Zone, but it's a good comparison for the type of runs I have been accepting for now. And the Cavern Zone is really good, but it has a big mistake in it, so I can get time save there. My Iceberg Zone is just near perfect, but I can get really good Iceberg Zone a lot of the time now. I have a mistake in Lava Zone, and then my Haunted Zone is in Granite Zone. The spots that I need to work on the most are the most strict. But even then, there's still room for improvement in those. And just throughout the run, it's been very good to compare against to get a good reference point of what's realistic and what I should and shouldn't reset for. Because if I tried to compare against my other PBs, I would be a lot more unfair to my runs. You know, I'd have a lot more, like, plus whatever splits. You know, that Glalie was decent. I usually aim for lower than 42 seconds. I usually don't get it, because I'm not that good at that minigame, to be honest, but that's what I aim for. You'll see it has power with a lot of the minigames. I'm not the best at some of them, but some of them I'm decent at. I changed my comparison here because I want to see the accurate number. It is minus 27.9 when adjusted for mudkip. You know, if it was on the actual comparison, I would actually be +2, I think. But that's not really fair. So I'm back on the 3 optionals comparison, because the 3 optionals comparison actually does assume I have mudkip. And that's because a lot of the time, I'll have gotten slowpoke at that point, and will grab mudkip to make up for the missing optional. Because at the time I made the comparison, Bonsai and Sudowoodo were not a factor. I was never even considering them in the route. But I've kind of reconsidered a bit since then. Piloswine right there is the convenient friend if you're missing berries, but I'm actually ahead on berries, which will lose me a bit of time in a second, but you'll see. That's the crate I usually get for 10 berries. Sometimes I'll get another one on that path to Primplup there, but a lot of the time I don't need more than 10. So once again, we talk to Drifblim, try and get the plus mash 2 to go to the meeting place, and then mash plus to do that, but we heard the music, so wasn't optimal. But I'm not very good at, because I have to mash 2 to press the button and then mash plus. Moving there without accidentally pressing the home button is sometimes really annoying because it's a small button in the middle of the Wii remote. So we have like a quick dash path here to talk to Ponyta, and we'll have 1365 berries. Ideally, we want 1355. And you know, normally after this dash here, these dash upgrades for Ponyta, we would go get Burmy up on the steps because it's a really fast friend. Because we have an extra friend, we won't do that. And actually, truthfully, in this attempt, I wasn't originally going to do this because this Burmy strat was really new, and I was just like on good enough pace where I was like, I don't really want to. I'd rather have consistent RNG in Cavern Zone for Torchic and Raichu replacements. But I accidentally run past it. And I try to stop, and I'm like, okay, wait, no, there's what? I like wasted a second there, and like, okay, I need to talk to Drifblim. You befriend Drifblim here. We used to do it in Cavern Zone, but the extra movement was just not really worth it. So, the time loss here is that menu. If you have 5 or less berries, 10 or less than 10 berries, Drifblim will say, "Oh, sorry, you don't have enough berries," and then end the conversation right there, and you don't have to mash out of the menu or anything. But because I was unfortunately not in the position I needed to be in, I had to accept that the berries were going to be what they were. But we're on a good pace into Cavern Zone. It could be better. My Iceberg was not amazing. I lost time on there straight up. When I didn't need to, but like I had some good fights, and that's really impactful for it. But unfortunately, I also had some like small movement mistakes, and the quagsire and artillery spawns were not really great. So that's like a good time save off of this run if you wanted to think of it that way. Now, because we have Mudkip, we're going to need to get all 4. We're going to need to get Meowth, Geodude, Torchic, and Raichu, in theory. Now, I've been trying this backup strat that you'll see in a second. But first, I go up left here. Most people run straight and then go left towards Aeron. But if you need Geodude or Meowth, then those Pokemon can spawn in this area right here. And I think it's about the same speed, if not actually a bit faster. Then we just kind of hook left to match the cutscene trigger. Now, we'll see this Aeron spawn here is going to be really good. I was really happy with how it ended up being, because sometimes you have to walk a decent distance to actually talk to Aeron. He was a bit off screen, so I had to move a bit, but generally it wasn't bad. Now, we look to the left and try and see that floating, like, dialogue box or whatever for the cutscene. We don't see anything here. So I'm just like, okay, I'll go get Bonsai. Bonsai and Sudowoodo, they can act as both safe. They're slower, like they're 35 and 30 seconds, which compared to like the 2 28-second, I think, friends for Raichu and Torchic, can be slow, but the finding them part is really easy, and the actual hide and seeks are really easy. If you're gonna get bonsai, you will want to get Sudowoodo, but either way, we're gonna check for Mawile first, because we want to check for the spawn if it's any better, and that's a really good Mawile spawn right there. I bonked into Sudowoodo, so that sucks. But that's like before the intersection. That never happens. The closer Mawile is, the better it is. Sometimes Mawile's all the way in that back wall, and you're wasting a bunch of time running all the way back there, and all the way back to where you need to be. And of course, my comparison can handle that, because there's a lot of leeway in my PB. I almost actually missed Mawile there, but I used to dash into Mawile for these chases, and occasionally I will if there's like a really narrow corridor. I mean, if there's a very wide corridor and Pokemon are like in the way or something of my Thunderbolt, but I'm not doing that here. I turn around and get Sudowoodo. You know, my movement has not been that great. See, I jumped extra times because of the talk box not popping up where I thought it would. You know, underestimating or misunderstanding it can waste a second or two and kind of offset your gains, so you gotta be careful. Now we'll see, the path for Bonsai and Sudowoodo is the same. You look straight, look right, and then you, if it's not in either of those spots, then you run behind where Dugtrio is on that rubble. But Sudowoodo was down there, so I got it there. I bonked into Golbat there. All these bonks probably made this not as good of a cavern zone as it could have been, but even still, this cavern zone's kind of crazy in terms of how it ended up being. Because now I have 2 Pokemon, so essentially I don't need to get Geodude or Meowth if I don't want to. But instead, the Raichu and Torchic spawns can be really bad. So what I'm going to do instead, you'll see, is I'm just going to play a game where I aim to get 2 of the 4. It doesn't matter which 2, just 2 of them. I aim for Magnemite first, I see it, and I'm like, okay, good. If you get 5 Pokemon, you can get Caesar, but it's not worth it. If you look in the background, I saw Cranidos running over there and was like, oh, I'll go get them on the way. They ran way further than I thought they would, so I gave up on that and had to go back and get this Cranidos, which that's a time loss. My spawns were good, but that was just, you know, a bit of a blunder on my part. If I just went ahead and got Cranidos and didn't try and go for those far ones, it would have been a lot faster. You know, this cavern zone was good, but there was actually some things on my part and just on the luck part that could have been even better. As it stands, though, this is a really good cavern zone. Magnemite was in a good spot, and Cranidos I knew where it was. I didn't have to go searching for it. And, you know, there's 10 years, so I don't need that, so let's go left. I actually haven't tried the 10-year quiz here. I assume it's not fast, but I don't really know. I haven't bothered because it's luck, and I already have enough luck in Cavern Zone, to be honest. We actually get a good Marowak here. A lot of the time, it'll go in a direction where it doesn't always bonk into these the way you want. But this time it did, so I was able to get an 88. A lot of the time I end up getting 87 or 86s. If not, just accidentally getting hit by Marowak altogether. But, yeah. But this is a good start. I think Hoom's actually ahead of me here in terms of this comparison, but the fact is, I have 4. I'm actually going to let myself get Geodude and Meowth if I see them, so I can make my spawns a bit more convenient, and I may be able to save time on item slides and other movement and stuff. But there's another time save that comes up that's not what I expected to happen, but it worked out really well. I'm glad that movement there worked out, because sometimes when I try to dash for that berry, sometimes I miss the crate. Or bonk into Diglett. Occasionally I'll consider dropping the items to talk to the friends. And say to myself, like, yes, you have to spend extra time picking up and putting down the item, but you also have to move a lot less. In this case, though, not worth it. But yeah, at this point I'm like, wow, we're really ahead. This is a good start. Because normally it's like a higher 109 if it's a good run. So to see it in like a 915, even though we are missing 2 Pokemon, is a really good sign. I wasn't sure how good, because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but it definitely was a good sign. But, yeah. So, we're here, and... you know, here we spawn and Raichu in them. And Phanpy, I won't go into detail about it. Actually, I'm going to be walking a bunch, so I'm going to have time for it. But Phanpy, there's a theoretical strat. If you happen to get an extra Pokemon in Cavern Zone somehow, and are able to not get Diglett yet, there is a strategy where after Bastiodon, you could maybe get a really fast friend by Phanpy, because the Big Berry will respawn and let you get Phanpy, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, Phanpy will spawn like in a very convenient spot. So basically, the idea is that you get Phanpy. I mean, you get the extra friend and don't have to spend time running over to Diglett. Then you finish Bastiodons by minigame and stuff, and you run left and talk to Diglett to get the friend, and then go up to Phanpy to get with the berry to get the other friend. And if it's in a really close spot, it can be really good. Now, this item slide sucks. You have to get a really good angle and kind of bring it along the entire wall. It's very easy to drop it. I think I'm about to drop it here. Yep. That spot is very bad for dropping the thing if you don't have the right angle. And sometimes it's hard to tell because sometimes you can be doing what looks like a really good angle and it just falls. Once I dropped it twice, I was like, okay, I'm just going to walk to it and pick it up. That was not really a good item slide. I probably lost a few seconds there, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. You know, we're ahead enough to where it's fine. We're about where we need to be. So we run over to Gibble and do that fight. You know, it's not... There's a lot of small things you can do in Cavern Zone to get better luck. And, like, if you get the ideal perfect run, you could get, like, some really crazy stuff happening, but... Are you going to get the ideal perfect run? How much do you want to hedge against those bets and chances and stuff, you know? In this case, I have a lot of leeway. And I know, like, in addition to everything else, I get to get Burmy later, which is going to save me some time later. In addition to all the other time save I have. Because I have mudkip. But I'm looking at my run, I'm like, okay. This is good pace. I'm nervous. I know the next two Pokemon are probably going to take like 30 seconds each, so I'm like, wow, this is going to be a pretty good start, I think. So I'm just like, okay, I'll get whatever's convenient. You know, the extra movement is not going to be worth the extra, you know, time it takes. Raichu's convenient, and I was like about to do it. That can actually be a good chase spawn, so maybe I should have done it, but Torchic is just consistently quick, and it's hard to see a lot of the time, so I was like, okay, I'll go get Torchic now, so that it doesn't become an issue later. Because Torchic is probably one of the ones you actually really want to get, because it's just 2 hits, and it's done. Now, Torchic you can't get early because it's long text boxes, but... Now, Raichu isn't the fastest of the friends you can get here. I go and get Diglett here because I'm not trying to do that Phanpy strategy right now. And we're already on really good pace. We just need one more friend, and we can be on our way to do Bastion. And that's Meowth. Now, Raichu was there, but it was far in the back. That's the good thing about having this leeway here, is that you can have a lot less Cavern Zone resets on this stuff. The Meowth quiz can be tricky, but these text boxes are really quick on this version of the quiz that I got. Because I'm getting like these like 4 or 5 word questions. Which, you know, really helps out. But yeah, I'm like, oh crap, I'm done with the quiz. I'm literally talking to Bastiodon before the 14-minute mark, which is insane. That never happens. Generally, like, I think my reference point, I try to get a 14:45 or better in a lot of my runs. A sub-14 Cavern Zone talk there is unheard of. And then this minigame ends up being crazy, and is what puts this run actually ahead of Whom's run, I think. In terms of, like, confirmed, aside from, like, the other RNG stuff, but... Is that, like, we get a double hit here, and then we get the corner hit, so it keeps, like, stacking. We get another double hit, so that's a lot of points. We do miss this one here and get like 200. But we get the 600 and then another double hit here to be already done with the minigame's points. And then we save even more time because we bunk off Dugtrio on a very lucky spot. We barely missed that, but we still bunk off Bastiodon, so it's a bit faster than it would have been if we hit a panel. That's just a really, really good Bastiodon minigame. Like, probably one of the best ones I've ever seen in an actual attempt. I have a recording of like a near task, like level 1, and that's very close to that in terms of how long it takes. Because of just how convenient all those spawns were. Like, a 15-18 cavern zone, and then you're going to save time on Burmy later. And I know I have time save against this comparison that I'm using in Granite Zone and in Lava Zone. So I'm feeling pretty confident now. I'm like, oh god, I'm shook. This run is insane. Because I was like, expecting it to be good, but after I saw that, I was like, after I saw that 13-minute thing and I saw that, I was like, oh god. This is where I was really starting to set in. I was like, oh god, please don't give me gold ore. I've had runs that were like, not this good. I've had like a 15-30 something that got 2 gold ore, and I was so mad. And I had like a 15-20 something, I think that happened once with 1 gold ore. And I think it's still PB'd. I could be wrong, I'm not sure which run that was, but gold ore has been really mean to me lately. And I'm at this point, I'm like, oh god. And I remember, okay, I'm like, okay, I have Burmy. And this is something I discussed in the Discord literally like days before this run. It was like, okay, actually, I'm going to start doing this. I've thought about it for a long time, and I haven't want to mess with my splits, but at this pace, it could be make or break the difference between PB and no PB. So, you know, as it stands, it's insane to see. But, I say, like, I could have hit. I would have crashed out. Like, you might not have seen runs for a week if I had lost the run to gold ore specifically here. So it was that, like, I would have been so mad. But anyway, most runs get Magby here. And Magby's a really fast friend. If he's, and generally, you know, he's like a 25-28 second, I think. Generally is what a good Magby's like. The problem is that's good, but you can do better than that. And I was like, well, here's the deal. Instead of relying on Magby RNG and rolling the dice on getting like a 25-28, and having to rely on A, there's 2 different chase Magby spawns. One is like a slower text box, and B, getting a decent chase pattern and location spawn, which you get 2 chances for, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. I was like, wait, I can just not get Magby. So I'm going to get a fake time save here, you'll see. It is because I'm not getting Magby. You know, him on top I've had to do a lot of practice on because I used to screw that fight up a lot. Eventually I was like, okay, I can't. I try and like cut it short and be clever about it and like, oh, I can get a slightly better time. It never works. I stopped trying it. Even that was like not the best, but because his invincibility frames there last a good while. But yeah. Anyway, so we finished this and we're gonna hit the drill. You know, it's not. I'm not nervous. No, I'm shaking. I'm like, oh God, please. Please, for the love of God, don't screw me this way. Let me screw up the run myself, please. Like, this is like the best pace I've ever been on. And I'm like, okay, iron ore. Good. What I wanted. So, you know, we take it over here. You know, and there's an item slide you can do on this, like, lava wall here. I don't actually know if it's actually fast or if it's just something we used to think might be fast, but it's really jank and annoying, and I'm not doing it. Well, I think only Brady's ever really done it in a PB. And it's just, I don't think it's worth it, as far as I know. but I have gotten it before, and like sometimes I can do it consistently, but there are invisible walls you have to go against, and it's, are you really saving that much time versus, because you have to spend time on the picking up the item and putting it back down animation, all that stuff. But so yeah, kind of walking over here, and you know, I'm really feeling it now because I got one iron ore, but I'm like, okay, this is not a guarantee by any means of a PB. Because I still haven't gotten the second one, and I still haven't figured out, like, electrode and what else is going to happen. So, I get straight here, which is what you want. And we're going to hold 1 to, like, buffer a dash input. It'll put us a bit closer to where we want to be, but it still isn't going to be, like, perfect. But we use that a few times throughout the run. I think we also use it after the Charmander fight. And there are a few other places where it could work, but it would just result in you balking into the Pokemon, so why would you? But you have to run and interact with that and say, hey, the switch is broken before you can actually do it. I wasted a second or two trying to pick that lever up, but it's not a huge deal. That's kind of expected because it's off screen. You kind of have to, you know, make it work. And jumping the gun there, all that's going to result in is you jumping an extra time and not actually picking the item up anyway. And just wasting more time. So I stopped doing that. Yeah, now that we've cleared that, we got to do the attraction, but a back left, you can talk to Golden there. But yeah, so as it stands, this next split, it's gonna say, like, I would say remove like 27 to 30 seconds from that, and it's a more accurate comparison. I did literally see both of them and was like, I'm gonna bonk them both out of spite. And because they're right in the optimal path and they're like have no weight on them, so it's safe to bonk them. If it was like a heavier Pokemon, then I wouldn't, but... And I got the Iron Ore, and at this point I'm like, oh no. I have to play out the rest of this run. And I have to do it good. Because this is like... This is mind-blowing pace here. And I'm like, I'm going from 1833 to legitimately 217 possibility pace. And knowing that there's time save in this zone, time save on the fact that I have, like, I'm going to do that Burmy thing. And, you know, time save against Mew depending on how stuff goes. I'm sitting here thinking that it is one of the scariest, like, end games I've had to go play out. Just in terms of, like, oh, because I don't know when I'm going to get another chance like this, you know? I just want to have lost so many runs, but this is, like, my best pace, like, ever at this point. And I think I could actually get a better pace than this, you know, if I grinded it out a bit more, but for what this run is at this point, especially with that Bastion minigame, it's just insane. Luckily, you know, because this is the second time this has been spawned in, you see me spamming the chat, this iron top is a lot easier to grab. I can just dash and then kind of jump into it. And you know, this next minigame is going to be pretty simple too. But yeah. I don't know a lot to say about this part. I think I've lost like a run to this minigame like 1 or 2 times ever. Because ultimately, it's not a hard minigame. I think that one or two times I just got like, I forgot how the controls worked, I think. Because it was like a while ago, if I remember correctly. And I was like, wow, that's so stupid. But, anyway, that's neither here nor there. You just have to get 5,000 points, which in this minigame you can literally get like 42,000 or some crap. Because these, the power-up in this minigame is really generous. And even without the power-up, it's not that hard to meet the bonus even with Pikachu. It's just the controls are a bit jank on these tops, but you can get knocked off, but like it's very easy to knock several Pokemon off without even really doing much. But like this power-up, literally you can just sit there, you won't get any knockback, and you just knock everything off the side. It's like, okay, I've already met the goal for that minigame. But even still, even with the fact that I'm missing Magby though, I said to keep that in mind in the chat, but like, we'll see what this comparison ends up being. I think. And this is where I like kind of realized, okay, yeah, this strategy of skipping Magby is going to pay off. Because the friend routing is not so strict that we need to get Magby. We can get better friends in Haunted Zone later. Because we're a minute and 24 seconds ahead because we didn't have to deal with the RNG at all there. And we just kind of did the fights and everything correctly. So, it worked. So, we're like basically a minute ahead now. Okay, I did lose like a fraction of a second there. I've actually lost more time before because I've gotten hit by Charmander. So that's why I'm still going to save time on that. But also, coming up, I'm also going to skip Ponyta. And the reason for me doing that is you'll see me holding 1 to buffer the dash here and then just kind of going back into the regular dashes. But, you can actually do that after Meditite too, but you'll bonk into Meditite no matter what you hold, so you might as well just not. But yeah, the reason I decided to skip Ponyta here, Ponyta is the fastest friend for this, in theory. If you get, like, a perfect Ponyta chase, and I like, what was, see, I've been distracted on all the quizzes this run. I sat there a second, being like, is this him on top? Yeah. Because I didn't want to ruin the run by spamming the button on accident. Like, I spend time thinking about it sometimes, because I'm like, okay, I could press it and ruin the run, or I could wait like a second. But yeah, Ponyta can sometimes just waste like 10 seconds, and this is good enough of a pace, especially where I'm just like, no. Lopunny is way more consistent of a friend, and it's like a few seconds slower, but like, yes, you have to deal with some bad spawns occasionally, but the chase is so much easier, and you don't have to like worry about losing 10 seconds if you screw it up or get a really bad path. Because sometimes with Ponyta, you just get a bad path and you lose a run. So ultimately, I was like, and I wasn't actually the first person to do this. It's a person named Seodai, I think, if I remember correctly. The Japanese runner who started doing this for like when they started running the game. They were like one of the first people to actually just run Japanese. But they were the ones who started doing this, and I was like, you know, as I thought about it, I was like, this is probably worth doing. Originally, I wasn't going to do it because I was like, oh, the friend routing doesn't work or whatever. But then I looked at it, and I'm like, actually, no, it does. You know, the Burmy thing is extra, you know, because the friend routing will work regardless. Because the thing is, the way we have the friends set up, normally, if we go between Ghastly and, well, actually, I'll go through this in the Haunted Zone a bit more. Like while we're going and getting Mime Jr. and Burmy. But, because there's actually something I'd rather talk about here real quick. So for this fight here, Charmander, it has 4 health bars, and I think I lost time in many runs in the past because I dashed into it 4 times to kill it. Because I was like, oh, the sitting back up animation is fast. But I realized at some point, like, dash into it once and then do the Thunderbolt stuff. Because if you try and hit it 4 times, it's going to be like an 84-second fight as opposed to like an 88... Or no, it's going to be like an 80-second instead of an 84-second fight. It's just a lot easier, too, than dashing into it 4 times, to be honest, but... And then for this minigame, you know, sometimes it's a bit finicky, and you can actually, like, lose runs to it if you aren't careful. Ideally, you want to land on, exactly, like, 5,000 to 5,900. You don't want to get the 6,000 points for the bonus, because you lose, like, a few seconds on it. It's not a huge deal, but it's the only time... significant thing in this otherwise auto-scroller minigame. You know, getting between the bonus, the goal and the bonus. Because for a lot of minigames, Pikachu is under the bonus, but here it's actually over. I mean, Pikachu's bonus is less than the goal, but for this one it's not. But yeah, we hit it smoothly with no issues. And then we want to make sure here we don't just go when we turn around after this split here. We do not just run straight backwards, because we're going to run into that sign if we try and run straight backwards. You actually have to hold back left, because after this minigame, for some reason, the game puts you at this angle. I guess for this cutscene here, maybe? The Pikachu is not like at a flat angle. You cannot just run straight out of the room. And we see this comparison, I'm like, okay, clearly I'm missing, Ponyta and Magby is like a minute total, but I'm like a minute and 6 seconds ahead. I'm like, oh, dang. But I'm trying to rein myself in. I'm like, okay, I know this is really good. Let's focus. Don't autosave here. You have to wait till you're outside the room. But if you turn straight around, you'll hit that sign there. And I actually waste like a second or two here because I go to save. And you'll notice, like, I'll mash plus to open it for the save and quit so I can just leave the area. Like, yes, I'll save. But then, no, I accidentally say no here, which means, unfortunately, I have to waste, like, 4 or 5 seconds, saving again and then doing it. But it's better to save again than just to press the home button and reset, because that is a very long loading screen, and I learned that the hard way. I lost a run that way. But yeah. So I guess now that we're through here, we're going to start doing this. We're going to go to talk to Ponyta to do Double Dash after this. We could technically have gotten it earlier, before, but there's no point, because we're just going to have to do an extra triple movement, and it's not worth it. But, here's where we're going to get Burmy and Mime Jr. We used to get Mime Jr. after Haunted Zone, but ultimately it makes no functional difference in terms of, like, timing, and in terms of friend routing. It's a lot better to get, Mime Jr. and Burmy before Haunted Zone, but especially at the same time, because you're saving some movement, up and down the treehouse. But, as it stands, we're gonna get both of them, so we'll have +2 friends compared to what we normally would, but we're -2 from Magby and Ponyta. But we have an extra friend usually. We usually have 66 friends, because we'll usually get Ghastly, Magby, and Ponyta. And that'll put us at 66 whenever we talk to Rotom. We need 65 to put us to the next area. So we have a leeway of 1. Because we get Burmy and Mime Jr., we can literally just skip Ghastly and replace it with Metapod, which is what I'm going to do here. But Mime Jr., we're going to be -1 on Mime Jr. later after Rotom. Because we usually used to get it later. So we actually have 67 friends. Then minus the 2 for Magby and Ponyta to 65. -1 for Ghastly, but +1 to Burmy. So that'd be 65 again. If that makes sense. But the other advantage, other than this, for getting Burmy later, is that we can do a bit more finagling with our friend route. And normally we save Metapod and get it instead of Electrode, only in the circumstance that the Electrode RNG, fails. But I was like, well, I timed it, and it's like, Metapod is still a fast friend. Faster than, trying to get, like, Ghastly. It's like 14 seconds or something, I don't know exactly, but might be, like, closer to 18, but... basically, replacing Ghastly with Metapod is a really good idea. Because you save, like, several seconds if you get the Electrode RNG. And if you don't, then you can get Spinarak as the replacement friend, and you're still going to get the same amount of time as you would have spent on Ghastly. What you will need to do, because otherwise you'll be low on friends because of the fact that you got Mime Jr. when early, but regardless, you know, we're gonna go to this Tangrowth minigame, and unfortunately, I'm not whom. I'm not good at this minigame. I can, if I like practice it a bunch, I can get good times on it. But the thing is with these Vine Swing and this minigame is that the timing of it is a bit like, you have to wait until Pikachu is going as far back on the vine as possible before you swing. Otherwise, it will give you a very bad swing instead, and you will not really, it won't help much. What's about to happen here is exactly that. So I do my first swing, it ends up being kind of weak for some reason. I'm like, okay. My second swing I do is too early, so it's slow. So I have to do another swing before I do this. And my momentum isn't really built up the way I want it to now, so it's kind of slow. Ends up being an 1140, which, you know, that's like 4 seconds slow compared to like what I generally get, like a mid 7.5 or something. But it's not like the worst thing, they're all just a few seconds. But still not ideal, but good. But yeah. I tend to do those whiffing swings a lot and kind of lose time. Sometimes I even lose runs to that, like, it's bad. But you'll see we've lost time because of getting Mime Jr. and Burmy, but that just means the comparison's more accurate now. So I don't know if we're exactly a minute and 23 seconds ahead, because there is some we still need to get Lopunny, which means there's still some time difference. I think we might have actually lost time between splits, but I'm not. Well, because we had to get Burmy as well, which like kind of reversed the time difference there. Yeah, because we got Burmy and Mime Jr. and we lost 4 seconds on Tangrowth. So it's not that surprising that we're like down like 43 seconds. But that's not a huge amount of time to be down for having to get 2 extra Pokemon and doing a bit bad on the minigame. So we kind of have to time the double dashes here. It's like after like the 6th dash or whatever, you kind of have to press it at a certain time, but I'm not very good at it, to be honest. You know, I'm glad it worked out, but I'm not very great at that sort of thing. So we kind of just move around here. It doesn't matter as much, especially in this part of Haunted Zone. The long stretches of hallway are really where it matters more. Because that's where your speed increase is really where it has the biggest effect. And unfortunately, you know, I'm going to start missing double dashes here. Honestly, that's better than I remember it being, but I think it's a Granite Zone, actually. I might have been messing up double dashes, but I guess it wasn't as bad as I thought here. My PB also was like pretty good. All my comparisons have been pretty good in Haunted Zone and Granite Zone recently. Not like perfect, but decent. So skipping Ghastly is a fast friend in some cases, but I think generally when we rerouted it, I realized you can just go up the stairs for Spinarak, or even just go up the stairs for Electrode. And it'll be just as long as it will take to get Ghastly through the fight, or through the chase. Because you still have to transition into the chase, do the countdown, and then do the minigame. So there's no real reason not to go for the Metapod risk. I was glad this kind of worked out here for Dusknoir here. It wasn't the best movement ever, but those steps particularly can be kind of finicky. And you can easily end up running into walls and wasting time if you're not very careful with your movement on the D-pad. Now, just like the first minigame, you can get speed boosts on this. You can also get it on Ponyta's or Absol's attraction, but it's not really that useful there because you're doing a lot of jumping anyway. It's kind of hard to maneuver that well. But this is a really good Cranidos. Like a 9.35 is really solid. I think like the record Cranidos, it's like a 9.08, I think. So better than I usually do. I usually get like a 9.5 or 6 or something. But yeah, you'll see me splitting here. I barely don't get a gold there, actually. I'm actually doing pretty good movement here. I just don't realize it at the time. I think I'm doing a lot worse than I actually am. But, okay. So, we go out to get Duskull here. You know, don't get any of the double dashes here, so that's not great, but I feel like I'm under the impression at this point in the run that I'm doing better, like, different than I am. Obviously, if this was actually the real pace, I would be on, like, a, insane, like, a 2:16:55, but I'm only saving time because I skipped Ghastly here. I'm gonna have to get that time back on Metapod. That being said, this pace is possible to be getting. It's just not accurate to this run, particularly. But as I do these double dashes, you know, this comes up. We're coming up to the part of the run that I don't like that I did. Well, actually, I have a bit more time. So I forgot a step. I stopped there for a second. That wasted a second. But you know, Abra is always going to be like it's like a crazy good friend, honestly, because like you literally have to put in no effort. You literally just talk to him and get him, and he's very good at the minigame. Like, I feel like they wanted him to be on that minigame, but they didn't really have a good use for him. They're like, I'll do this. But he does also appear in the treehouse later, so maybe that's just why. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. But Abra's just a really good friend here. You just do 2 dashes and you can talk to him without having to do anything. Now, technically, Breloom and Riolu are options for instead of Lopunny. I think Riolu could actually maybe be good. I'm not really sure. If you get like a really good spawn. I haven't tried it. Breloom is a really long fight because of the way you have to fight it. It's not a hard fight. It's just, you have to fight it a particular way, so you can't really use Thunderbolt. So. But yeah, we have to kind of cut the corners as close as we can here. And I don't think generally most runs between them don't have like a huge difference in time. But I try and optimize like pressing left and moving forward as much as I can. I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes, but, you know, I assume there's some difference. The real thing is you don't want Umbreon or someone else to just stand in your way and, you know, make you either push it out of the way or walk around it. Because that will lose you a tiny bit of time. Just this walking segment is so slow, like if there's any way to drop this from the upper level to the lower level or whatever, it might be really good for speedruns, is all I'm saying. Or just any way to do, like, you can't even do any item slides here because all these walls are, like, jutting out pillar style or whatever. Like, they have these, like, sort of, I don't even know what to call them. Like, these corner spots. They just make it not work. Which sucks because you can at least do an item slide to save time in theory, but in practice you can't really do that because of the way the whole area is. But we fixed the piano. Now we're coming up on the segment of the run that I wish that I didn't do the way I did. So I'm on an insane pace. Like, at this point in the run, I'm like a minute ahead, at least. Maybe ahead. I'm not sure exactly, but it's really good pace. I run to this wall, waste a couple seconds. Okay, that's not the problem. I talked to Duskull. You know, not bad. I didn't get all the double dashes I wanted, but nothing in the world. And then I go and do the sabeleye quiz. So, this talk box is what I was talking about with those things. They pop up and then you still jump even though you press 2. Sometimes it just happens. I don't know exactly if it's because I'm looking away from him when I do it or what, but regardless, I do the quiz. First question's fine, you know. Where are we? We're in the library. Not really that hard. Can you play the Speed Slam? No, you can only play Bastion's Attraction. And no, who opened the entrance door of the haunted house? I say Duskull because I'm thinking of the gate outside, because that is a separate question that he'll also ask you. Sabeleye asks some really rude questions, the third question. He'll ask about whether or not, like, the rail or the piano was broken. Like, he asked, what was broken in the haunted house? The piano or the rail? And you think, oh, the rail was broken. No, it's the haunted house, so it's the piano. He asked the exact same 3 questions, which just seems insanely lucky to me. Because I was too panicked, I was like, oh god. But this time I remember, okay, it's Drifloon, I got the question wrong, so obviously I know it's not Meowth. But I'm so mad, I lose 28 seconds to this. So I'm like, okay. I just have to lock in now. Because I'm still on pace. I know I was like a minute ahead. But I have no idea how this is going to go. I'm like, okay, did I lose it now? It should be fine, so I force myself to continue and just focus. But I am not happy. Sabeleye is really annoying sometimes. The other question that gets me sometimes is the, I said I missed a couple seconds there, walking into him and dashing past him. But all that stuff adds up to small time saves you can get too. But anyway, the Sabeleye quiz is just the light. There's a question about like what's hanging up in the haunted house. It's like lights and curtains or whatever, and the answer is I think lights. I thought it was curtains because like the windows and stuff, but the answer is lights. I'm not really sure if this minigame, if there's like any way to speed up the way the amount of time the Pokemon take to spawn in. I try to just kill them as fast as I can. Because generally, you know, you're always gonna have to get 5,000 points, so you just get the bare minimum and die. So you kill Hunter and let the gas that spawns in first get you. So yeah, I'm sitting here staring at the timer. I'm so mad at myself. I'm like, okay though, I was ahead. But I know I'm going to lose time here because I'm going to have to get Lopunny in this next split. And I'm going to have to get Metapod extra. But I'm not going to get Mime Jr., so there's that. But we're going to split right here. And it's like, yeah, we lost 32 seconds in that split, and most of those were from... You know, there were some movement mistakes and stuff like that with where I road time or whatever. Most of that was Sabeleye. Everything else was like kind of the expected sort of mistakes you would get. And here I'm messing up my double dashes because I'm nervous or whatever, but honestly it's not really that useful in this hallway anyway. Ideally you want at least the first one, but nothing in the world. So unfortunately, here's my strat for like the friend routing kind of falls apart. I didn't get the Pokemon I wanted. Electrode did not spawn in where I wanted. But I do know, I see him, like I immediately see him rolling by up the stairs, and like after a split second of thinking about it, I'm like, okay, he's not there. I see him rolling by up at the top up there. I'm like, okay, I'll roll and get him, because I don't know. I feel like this is faster and just a bit easier movement-wise than the other thing, at least at the moment. I think it's pretty similar to how long it takes for Spinnerack, so it really doesn't matter. Because for Spinnerack, you would just go back up the stairs and talk to it, and then you would just get the friend and run back down and leave. Because Electro wasn't in a good spawn, unfortunately, that means I won't save like the 10 or however many seconds you save from getting Electrode and Metapod and like the strat and everything. You know, Ghastly's still replaced by Metapod, but Electro is replaced by worse Electrode. Which, you know, is crazy. This run doesn't have Electrode, and it lost 27 seconds on Sabeleye. But like, that by itself meant this run could have been like 40 seconds faster. So I go talk to Drifloon and then run down. I'm very bad at hitting these trees for some reason. You know, it's obviously still we're doing the strat, but it's always embarrassing because I feel like I suck at it. Like, even that movement there is bad. Like, I'm just kind of panicking and trying, like, see him in the chat, like, oh, I'm not letting my double dashes now. I'm just like, oh crap, I'm just screwed, now my run's dead, whatever, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna get a PB, and it's not gonna be what I want, but I'm still gonna be a PB. I'm like, okay, I gotta lock in. I gotta focus and just, not let this take me over. I did a good job at least hitting the Metapod tree, but I shouldn't have went. Oh, I did went right. Never mind. This girl what I was about to say. But yeah, we're about to go out there, and because we had to spend 20 seconds getting Electro instead of like that 8 we normally would, or 25 seconds instead of 8. Then we got Metapod and all that. We aren't getting Mime Jr., which is going to be like a saving grace here, because the way the friend rounding worked. But automatically, because we're getting a slow Electrode plus Metapod, we're going to lose time here. Plus, we're going to have to get Lopunny, and Lopunny's going to take like 30 seconds, which is an expected time loss, but we're trying to factor that in now. Which, in my future runs, it will be factored in on my splits, but for now, it's not. But yeah, like I say in chat, whatever the split says is going to be the correct actual comparison. So we're going to lose a bunch of time, because that's how it's going to have to be. It's not the end of the world, but this is what it is. If I get another PB after this, I'm going to save a bunch of time on that split. Assuming I get Electrode properly anyway. Okay, that was just slow. Waste like half a second there, but that's the thing about double dashes that sucks, is if you press too late, then the Pikachu will just stop for a second. I'm really hoping Lopunny spawns there. I tracked that it's on the bottom left, but I'm pretty sure it'll respawn. So I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm like, Lopunny, please, be in a good spawn, because I do not want to lose any more time. This run's already been really annoying in that regard. Right in the home stretch here. I'm palm sweating, mom spaghetti, whatever. And Lopunny's right there in the way. And I'm like, that's good. Burr is a backup if I absolutely can't find Lopunny, but it's not ideal. But here I see Lopunny. It's like, okay, I'll do chase. Lopunny goes up the stairs, and that's not the best chase path. You kind of have to run a bit. I'm like, okay, I'll double dash. Hopefully I'll run into it. It's kind of hard to tell whether or not I will, but I realized I'm running past it, and I managed to jump and swipe it with my tail. I was really proud of that chase, because I was like, under all that stress, I managed to pull it together and still hit it. I used to do that with Azrael a lot, but with Lopunny, it's like the same sort of thing, but it's like even more strict, and you don't even know if it's necessarily going to work, but I'm glad it did, because that could have been a bit annoying. Lopunny isn't entirely risk-free, it's just a lot better than Ponyta in that regard. But yeah. So, we finally get to Absol's attraction. We're already like seeing the time tick down. I'm just like, oh no. Now, I'm thinking, oh, is this worse than I'm thinking it is? Because I look at the timer, I'm like, oh crap, it's like one, does this take a full minute? These attractions do take time, but... So I go in to do this, and it's like, these Great Zone attractions... sometimes I debate, because like, if I hit any of these obstacles in this minigame, what I tend to do is I'll intentionally hit the last one and wait until the 11-second mark and then start dashing. I mean, not the 11-second mark, it's like... I think it is the 11-second. Yeah, the 11-second mark, and then I'll start dashing so that I can skip the bonus animation. Which isn't like a very huge save, but if I'm already losing time from hitting something, then it'll probably be faster to just save time with not getting the bonus. But anyway, clear the attraction, it's fine. Yeah, we're 27 seconds ahead, and I'm like, okay, this isn't necessarily going to be, 217, unfortunately. I was like, at this point, I was like, oh crap, well, it's still possible, but it's not likely. I'm sitting here thinking about, like, the comparisons and stuff I have here, because I know, yes, this is minus 27 here. In my head, I'm thinking, well, this run, I know, has, like, a huge time loss amount in the last split, and I think also some time loss in these upcoming, like, all three of these splits I lose some time in my PB compared to what I'll probably end up getting on average now. Because I've just gotten better at Granite Zone since then. But But yeah, so we're starting to hit the double dashes here. I'm like, okay, I'm going to change my comparison to see just what we're working with actually. So I compared it against my 33, and I'm like, wait, I'm 22 seconds ahead. There might be still a possibility of 217, even with all the stuff that happened. I don't know for sure, but I'm starting to think it. I'm like, oh, maybe. I mean, my PB didn't have good Blossom RNG from what I remember. So, like from what I remember, I think I might have. I don't know if my 233.18 was the one where I fell on Mew's obstacle hop. I think it was actually. Like, there's definitely late game time save to be had if I played this perfectly. So even though my other comparison, I'm like, relative to my PB or whatever, I do lose a second or two here, but it's not a huge jolly recover. But yeah, like compared to my PB and everything, like it's not debilitating or impossible to get 217. I'm just like, it depends on how I play. It's this is the first time I've ever had it to be where like I'm this late into the game, and if I play it right, I get the 217. I've gotten like close, but this is the first time where I'm like really feeling it, especially now that I made it so down to the wire now. But I do these jumps right, which is good. I don't usually get them super clean, but worked out. So we do this, and for like the first time in a PB really ever, I move to the left over here and almost get this lever trick. I miss it. But that's still a lot better than the alternative, where I almost accidentally jumped off the platform. If you saw there, I did not mean to do that jump like that. I meant to do it the way I've been talking about, where I jump forward, and once I land, I then walk to the spot and then dash to land where I need. If you do it right, you can save time, and I lost another second there on the movement too. This is why I thought the split wasn't going to be as good as it was when I was doing the attempt live. I was like, okay, maybe now it's over, I don't know. But I was locked in on these quizzes, because now I'm like, okay, I gotta focus, and honestly, I was just so salty after sabeleye, I was not gonna lose another quiz. But Porygon Z's usually I'm pretty good with. Finish my water. But yeah. I'm like so nervous at this point, dude. I'm like shaking. I'm like, I'm like nervous, but I'm like at the same time like lock in as much as I can, because I'm like, I don't want to lose this chance, because I'm still aware there is a chance, not a high one, but there is a chance. There are some double dashes I missed right there, but you know, it's not always going to be perfect. Generally, you want to be as consistent as you can. And you know, really, all these small mistakes are proving that like, if you get a run with this luck and get like Electrode to work out, and then get like better execution, there's a chance you could even just get a 216 with that. But it would have to be like insane execution, which unrealistic maybe. In practice, you probably want slightly better RNG, or at least similar without like the sabeleye thing. But I don't know. But yeah, this is you know, that fight went well. And this is part of why I've been talking about recently in the Discord or whatever. You know, I mentioned the 216 being like a huge barrier that nobody's ever going to be able to... If someone gets to it, it'll probably like kill the game in terms of like people wanting to beat it. Maybe who would try for it, I don't know, but maybe not immediately. But a mid 217 is definitely possible. It's something like I've considered going for, especially because Whom is basically on the collision course to go and beat this time, because he's gonna start running this game again to try and get a 217 from at Cinder's from what I can tell anyway. So if I want to keep the record for longer, or you know, just have a more solid time, I can try and go for a lower 217 or even a 216, but that's not really what I'm aiming. Just because there's a lot of leeway in this route that still has yet to be squeezed out. But I did all these jumps well enough, you know. This Togekiss one I'm usually good with. The Mew one's usually the one I struggle more on for the obstacle hops. But, you know, I'm really satisfied that I got that and didn't mess it up. But I'm like, okay. I'm really focused in. And, you know, because you got to think my mentality at this point, right? You know, I'm sure, you know, in addition to 217 being like such a big barrier for this game, because we haven't hit a barrier in like literally like since like what 2019 was last minute barrier. I don't even. It was like when the 218 was done, I think. It's been a long time since this game's had a minute barrier broken, and even then, since then, like the only people who have held this record in this game are Brady and Whom. Most of those have been Whom, and there was that stretch of time where Brady was getting runs and PBing and stuff, and then Whom came back and beat those runs later, all the way up until like 21802, which even in its own right, that 21802 might have been like a mid 217 run, if it wasn't for the batteries. But yeah, we're gonna go for Moel here, and you know, this menuing for Drifblim here makes me nervous a lot of the time because it's really easy to accidentally press the wrong thing if you're not careful. But I'm trying to get back in the habit of mashing the D-pad and then pressing 2 rather than like manually scrolling down. I don't really know that it's actually going to be too much faster in practice, but yeah, I'll definitely save like a second or two. But sometimes that movement there is a bit slow because I took the turn wide, but that worked out. But the thing about that mashing movement is, like, if I overshoot it, like, I used to get very used to it. I could just mash 5 buttons down and press 2 immediately and not to be concerned at all. Because I used to run Hamtaro, Ham Heartbreak, and that gave it a lot of menuing. Nowadays, I'm not as good as that because it's been a while since I ran that game. Like, I was like middle school or whatever when I ran that. So, you know, I had to be more careful, but it's still, saving time on menuing does add up. But yeah, at this point, I'm like very nervous still. I'm like watching the timer, being like, okay, are we good? Are we screwed? I mean, we're probably ahead, but how ahead? Will Blossom kill this run if it's bad? What's going on here? But I'm like, this minigame is long, I think. These text boxes are long, but at the same time, I don't know. It's all like, it's wild. I'm like, I don't know. Try to see if I put anything in the chat here, but I think I was too nervous. I was like, I'm just gonna play the minigame. But yeah. And like, you know, I guess while we're in this downtime, I'll give a shout out to some people who watching a lot of my streams. Shady Neko, shows up a lot. He's like one of my most recurring viewers. Very nice, and you know, chats with me about Park and stuff. Watching me play Park 1 and Park 2. But you know, I get more views, I think, playing Park 1, if I remember correctly. I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, to be honest. But because I haven't done a Park 2 stream in a while. That Park 2 is more my signature game or whatever. This game, I started grinding it because I was like, I wanted both records, and I was like, this feels so doable. And Whom is so good at learning the game that I feel like if he wants to get the record, at any point he can generally come back and grind it out, and he'll get it at some point. Which now I'm at a point to where I can just do that too. But for a while I was like, I just kind of want to have both of them at once. Of course, in the process of getting this run, Northern Lights Bomb or Mark or whatever name they prefer. And this is the gold, by the way. I was happy with this. So I was like, okay. Now it's a bit more possible. Definitely, you know, if I factor in the Mew obstacle hop thing and I get the exact same as my PB, it's there. I think. But But yeah, they and they actually just set the ice tree record too. But unfortunately, my Park 2 PB got beaten in the process of this. But I'm not going back to that super soon because I want to really get everything I want done in Park 1 first. Then I can switch games. Park 2, I know has room for improvement, and I'm good at Park 2. But I want to do that run in a vacuum, sort of. Like, I'm not going to forget how to run this game necessarily, but it's like, I want to make sure I don't derust here. I mean, I don't have to derust again and everything. You know, learn the run now and get everything I want done here, and then move on. I don't know, I'm quite at the point where I want to set the game down, but yeah. This area is kind of weird because, like, you have to. I've memorized the directions you need to run and everything, but those Grisidia buds are really easy to accidentally interact with and waste like a second or two. And these pillars or whatever, like, I always run straight left here, but these pillars sometimes can be kind of hard to walk around, especially with these slopes and stuff, to interact with this sign in a fast way. This wasn't the fastest because I did the extra jump on accident, but it was pretty good. But I'm really proud of this upcoming like treehouse movement here. Because, you know, we go back over here to get the mirror off the top of the treehouse. And I feel like I've been getting better and better at this. But it's really hard to do good movement for this because it's like the antithesis of what the D-pad is letting you do. You have to like run rounded corners and stuff, which, you know, if you're not sure how to control that properly, it can be really annoying. You know, as someone who's gotten used to the controls, it's not quite as bad. But even still, like, you can easily run like a random wall or just get stuck. But look, I get every single double dash here. Managed to narrow this corner out really well. And then jump and readjust myself to get this. It wasn't perfect because that last part was like a tiny bit slow, but only like barely. That was really good tree overall. Like, doesn't get much better than that. But yeah, after that treehouse, I'm like much more optimistic. I'm like, oh god, did I just save this run? Did I just make sure this is being 217? I'm not sure. You know, see Cyndaquil there, which I wasn't even processing at the time of doing the run, but I've lost a PB to Cyndaquil because I was sitting over there trying to place this mirror down, and Cyndaquil was beneath like the ramp there on the right side, and I talked to Cyndaquil thinking it was the check thing to put down the ramp. I was so mad. But yeah, we're getting close to the end here. But yeah, I think for this, I'll probably like mute the mic at the end or whatever, or just go over some like brief thoughts there too. But for now, like this minigame, I could pick Pikachu on it, but I'm always so stressed here, and the fact that like the pointer controls or whatever make it very, very possible that you accidentally don't get enough points and lose the minigame with Pikachu. I'm like, and Absol runs faster. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pick Absol. You know, I lost like a fraction of a second there on that menu, but whatever. Unfortunately, you don't really get any friends that are above the bonus threshold, so you can't save time there. But it's not that surprising though. This time, I get some of the points here. I think after a certain point, I'm like, actually, I'm gonna stay towards the middle. I don't know if like the movement is any faster. I think this first section is an auto scroller for the most part. But I'm not confident in that, so I'm like, I'm gonna stay towards the middle to try and minimize, like, just optimize the amount I'm running, because I'm gonna be able to get the amount of points I need no matter what. But especially right at the end, you want to be right at the middle, so you don't have to, like, take a diagonal curve to walk up the head there. You know, in this part of the minigame is just easy, as long as you aren't paying any attention, because you have such a big target at that point. The Wiimote pointer is really easy to use for that. The only real problem with the other one is, like, the Pikachu's pointer is that it is just small enough to where it's very hard to get the bullseye properly, and you get extra points for hitting it like head on versus like kind of to the side. But I used to be good at doing that, but I just got worse at it, and it's like I'm not gonna risk a PB anymore. Even if it is like a second or two lost, it's like I'm not. But yeah. So I'm looking at the splits like, and then I see this and I'm like, 218.03. I'm triple scared. I'm triple scared. I mean, I'm risking PB, world record, and 217. So I have 3 things to be worried about. So I immediately like, okay, Blossom, you better spawn good because that could make or break this run. Blossom can spawn in really bad spots sometimes, and just you won't be able to find it quickly, and then you'll lose so much time. I look around and I see it. I'm like, okay, that's okay. I didn't have to look around for too long to find it, but it wasn't ideal by like any means. And I lost a few seconds on it, but I don't think that's by any means like a bad Blossom spawn. Just okay, not good, just decent. But yeah, I say I had no clue, and I put a screenshot in the Discord at this moment. Because legitimately, I'm like, okay, I don't want to. If someone wants to see me do the 218 live, I wanted to give notice, but I didn't want to do like. I was too preoccupied and too busy in my head, and I was like, oh god. Yeah, what a pace. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, because like, this is ahead of Whom's run at this point, which you know is expected because he had the battery dead at this point, but. That essentially confirms to me, I'm like, okay. I don't know how Whom's endgame was. However my Mew fight goes, make or breaks the entire thing. And you know, the movement beforehand too. Because that's like underrated. You can lose like a few seconds here or there on the movement leading up to it. If you kind of miss double dashes, because if you hit your double dashes where you're supposed to, the movement just kind of lines up. If you don't, then it doesn't always. You know, this section of the run is just, it's very, like, it's, like, insanely stressful, the way this part of the run is set up for endgame. Like, in part 2, you kind of have a lot of breathing room, and, like, the Darkrai fight's hard, but if you kind of got a good sense of it, you can kind of feel more at ease. But, like, there is such little room for error here. Like, this obstacle hop and stuff is just... It's so scary. Obstacle hop on 217 pace is just like... I'm just like, oh my god, I'm having to, like, wrench my focus in. But, like, I get that there. And I get the double dash timing correctly. And I'm able to interact with Piplup, like, in the convenient spot. I'm like, okay, I gotta jump over this and fall down, because when you fall down, you can land there. But even, and do like one dash to talk to Piplup there, which is convenient. But even then, I got the double dashes on the way back, which I don't normally land, because I don't really bother. But I'm just so locked in at this point, I'm like, I'm not killing this run. But I'm like, doing that obstacle hop on this pace is like this movement was like, oh god, that means that if I get this obstacle hop right, then there is a very, 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 very high chance this is going to be the 217. Because that's a really good movement there. That's probably going to save me a bit of time. But I'm like, I don't know. Completely. But I do know, like, I still have to do the fights correctly, and I still have to use obstacle hop. So I'm like, there's a certain level of nerves run through my head at this point. I'm just like, oh. And like, you can't really optimize this obstacle hop too much. You can like dash a couple times and go faster, but like ultimately it's just do it. You know, fireworks off. I think of the Discord. I think, but I think most of the people did, but it's fine. Because it was kind of late at the time anyway. And I kind of pushed it with like 7 minutes, so it's little barely any notice. But yeah, I jumped over all that stuff and dashed it, and I was like 90 seconds. That was a good obstacle hop. I'm like, oh god, I have to lock in for these fights. And I'm like, even then, I'm not sure. Because that Blossom, like I said, I was thinking it was a bad Blossom. It wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was at the time. But it still was not great, at least compared to my PB's Blossom. So I know I'd like save some time here. Because I think there was like a weird jump or something in my PB. You know, and I do this fight correctly for the most part. I used to usually jump left, but I think right is technically a bit faster. It's just, I think, a bit more risky too. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that fight goes how I want it to. Garchomp. I've always struggled with the Garchomp because the D-pad, once again, like, I try and do it like fast and wasting time a lot of the time. But even then, when I'm nervous, it's very hard to do D-pad controls. Because, like I was trying to run down there and I ran left. That, like, put me off cycle of where I felt like I should be. Wasted, like, a second or two there. I recovered a bit and got this, but then I was a bit too close by, like, a smidge because I was trying to push it because I was like, oh, I have to recover. But yeah, this was an 80 Garchomp fight. That's basically, like, it's not quite as bad as losing the obstacle hop, but that is, like, I don't even know, like, I don't know if it's like 8 seconds. I think it's closer to like 5 seconds slow or something. 4 or 5 seconds. But I'm like, oh god, I think I might have lost it. I'm not really sure, but I'm not confident. And I'm like so scared at this point. So I do try to do this fast. And this is always in the back of my mind when I do Tyranitar. But this extra bonk there sucks. So I lose like 2 or 3 seconds there. Because normally you're supposed to get like a 88. So actually I get a 83. So I actually lose like 4 seconds there too. So like this run would have been like 8 seconds better even on that if I hadn't screwed that up. But at that point I'm like not sure because this is like very borderline. I'm thinking I probably lost it just barely based on those fights. But it's hard to say. Because it's kind of hard to tell when your pace is with like comparisons like these. But I do the Mew chase the way I'm supposed to, which is good. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's a 1735. There's only a few text boxes left. I'm like, legit, it could be possible. I'm like sitting there hoping and praying. Watching it, and I'm like, oh god, please, 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 please. I was like, and I'm seeing this pop up, and I'm like, oh god, I got it, didn't I, oh god, 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 oh god, oh god, please. There's text boxes, hurry, 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 hurry. And then fishes and I'm like, oh god. It's like, I was like elated. Like I couldn't sit still. I was like shaking. Like, it's very hard to articulate like exactly how, just how that felt at that moment. I was just like, I was like, dang. Because I've been grinding for this like 4 weeks. And like, I had been getting good paces and not getting the runs I needed for a while, but I had expected that I would probably get like a low 218 before I would get the 217. But to get a run on this pace, lose on Sabeleye, and have to claw it back at the end after, you know, is just insane, especially because it didn't have Electrode in it. Like, I don't know, I am baffled, honestly. Like, I was really just, I was so happy. And I am happy, you know. But, you know, looking back on it now, I'm like, there's still room for improvement here that I kind of want to go for. Don't know if I will, but I could. I didn't even, like, go over the fact that I'm, like, the whole no binary Trico route thing much, but that's okay. But yeah, I appreciate Firework being there, telling me to take a deep breath, because... Hey, he was there in my Part 2 PB, said the same thing, I think. But I was like... It just, I was not ready. It was like the Part 2 PB was like a different sort of like achievement for my world record there. I think that's still like that grind and all the work I put in was one of the ones I was most proud of. But this one is like also like up there at this point because like I think to a lot of people this one will probably be more impressive. I think. Yeah, I think in terms of if I'm comparing my PBs like on the face of it, this one is just more impressive. And the next, if I PB past this, this will definitely be more impressive. But part 2 was like one of my first records that I really felt like it was a big record, you know. This is just like a record I never thought I would get because I thought it was way too optimized. I tried this, and then when I got my copy of part 2 came in, I moved to part 2 because I was like, this is not working, and I played part 2 a lot more as a kid anyways. I was like, I'm moving on. Then I came back to him, was like doing a bit better, but I was like, okay, this is not that bad. And I kept chipping away at the minutes, and I was like, okay, actually, I can do this, actually. Seeing the room to improve, and then I kept like, you know, that's the thing about these speedruns that's satisfying to me. You know, I think Fireworks mentioned, like, in the Discord or whatever, like, he doesn't find it super satisfying because he doesn't see the room. I'm very good at seeing the room to improve for stuff like that, and I'm, like, very picky about it, and I'm like, I want my runs to be, like, as good as I can get them. I'm very perfectionist in that sort of way. But a determined perfectionist that doesn't like letting bad RNG stop me. That's why I was able to persevere for this, and I was, you know, so happy. And, you know, like I said, thanks Firework, thanks Shady, thanks to Whom's streams, the Mystery Legend helped me out and inspired me to, you know, when some of the times where I was struggling, it kind of helped me, refocus, because after seeing him, like, struggle on, cutscene list and then get the BRT record or whatever really quickly after that, that kind of helped me refocus at one point, because I was feeling a bit iffy at one point because of how many runs I was getting where I was dying to gold nugget and dying and dying and dying, and I was like, I don't think I would have quit, but I think it helped re-inspire me. And especially to start trying some no resets towards the end there, because I think they did help my granite zones be better. And I think I want to do more no resets sometimes if I'm gonna go for this. Because ultimately granite zone has room to improve that I'm not necessarily utilizing, because I haven't practiced as much as the early game. But yeah, I was really proud about this run, and you know, really happy for you for all the watches. Thank you to all of you too, everyone who's watching on YouTube or, you know, in post, everyone who's moderating on Speedrun.com, everyone who made this game, you know, thanks to Whom, Cinder, everyone in the Discord, you know, Deathline too, because Deathline was originally what, like, I saw his park runs in, like, I was like middle school or high school or whenever I saw it, but like I remember looking at the park leaderboard and being like, I want to, seems like a speedrun I can actually beat, but that like is still a good enough game, but it's a game I really like, and I feel like, not to say Deathline's run was bad though, Deathline's run was not bad, it was just a matter of like, for the time it was good, but I was like, okay, I have faith in myself that I can do this run. You know, Deathline was like retired around the time when I started doing Part 2, more seriously getting record for that game. Kind of helped me improve there. And, you know, Whom and Brady, you know, they've helped me, inspired me for Part 1, you know, get me interested in that game, because originally I was not as interested, but watching the runs I was like, actually, you know, optimizing the movement and all this stuff, the RNG, figuring out the best friends, you know, there's limitations to what you can optimize, but at the same time, it's a really fun run, and I think I'd advise a lot of people to give it a chance, you know. So, you know, I appreciate everyone's community, and, you know, here's to more runs in the future, and, you know, it's just really, surreal seeing, you know, this run, and being able to have this commentary, and, you know, go over everything, you know. It's been a long time coming, but I'm happy to be able to share this with everyone. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this game in the future, and Pokemon speedruns in the future, because, you know, there's a lot new stuff, a lot of old stuff, you know. Everyone's community is always so nice and, you know, inviting and just helpful. And, you know, I would like it to continue being like that because, you know, I always like having a good community of people and, you know, just working on the game we all enjoy and, yeah. But that's about it. But, yeah. I haven't really done a commentary like this before, so let me know if you enjoyed it, if you want to see more commentaries like this in other runs, perhaps. Or, you know, different towards content or whatever. But I felt like this is the occasion, if there's any occasion where I was going to do a post-run commentary, it would be this run. You know. But, like, this run, if you go through all the stuff in this run, there's a reason I think that 216 is possible and that mid-217 is very reasonable for me to do at a certain point. Not easy. No, that's a big difference. It took me a long time to even grind this. But just a sabeleye mistake by itself makes us basically like a 217.30 around there. Then, you know, electrode saves like 10 seconds or so at least. So that's like 218.20 almost, maybe a bit higher than that, but then, you know, there's a lot of miscellaneous mistakes I made in various parts. But, that being said, that requires getting this luck again. Which is possible. I mean, I've had a good early games, and if I was able to carry one of those early games into Cavern Zone, I could see myself being just as ahead, just from a different spot of RNG. But I'm really happy with this run. This was, aside from like the one major mistake, this was very optimized and a very, very good showcase of what this game can be like. Like, I was worried when I get to 217, I'd feel like I barely got it, and I'd feel like, you know, ultimately, Whom's 217 was still better because it had the motion control, like the batteries dying and stuff. But I feel like the way this run turned out, I actually can feel more confident in saying that I feel like this might be a better, you know, actual run. Which, you know, makes me feel a lot better about it. Even if it didn't end up having, like, the huge, you know, 217.20 something that it could have been. You know. In a way, I'm still glad because I'm happy that this ended up being a run I could feel really deserves being the record. But yeah. Guess we're getting towards the end, so I think I'll wrap it up. But I appreciate everyone who's watched this far, and, you know, I really just don't have any words other than just thank you, and, you know, yeah. But it's been a good time, and you know, I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of this community and everything, and hope to see more from us in the future. Hope to see more marathon runs and everything. We have some coming up in, we have one coming up in PSR Marathon, and we have one park race in the PMD Fest. So those will be good to look forward to. And I'm sure we'll have more in the future because we always are running this. Cinder's always getting new people to run this game, and, you know. And it's basically an unofficial PMD game at this point, with how everything is in the community. But, yeah. I think I'll leave it off there, but I appreciate you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next PB. Have a good one.